Welcome to the first session on the period of around 15 years after I located back to India from the US. So in India, I wanted to take care of my parents and also give back to the country of my birth. And I wanted to use some of the disruptive innovation skills that I had learned. So and I had done a disruptive innovation um, stint. My first one was in India way back in 1985 to 89. So I was also retired by this time, and I pretty much had some financial independence, so I could do very much whatever I wanted to do. So with that, let's start the story. So the first thing to do was to settle down and choose the city. So it was pretty clear that New Delhi would be most likely the city because my wife's parents were there. My father was in Pune. Pune was not really an option, but we could have done Mumbai or we could have done Bangalore. So Bangalore was on the radar because it was closest to kind of Silicon Valley. And if I wanted to do disruptive innovation, maybe it would have been better to be based there. But Delhi seemed like a good place. And we had, my father-in-law had an apartment which we could use. So that also made it easier. So we decided to choose Delhi. Now, in settling down in India, like almost in any country, when you first relocate, there are a fair amount of catch-22 situations. Like to buy a car, you need X, but you don't have X. But to get X, you need Y. So we finally figured out all this catch-22 kind of stuff, and we settled down in India. Now, it was very different to be in India. We had visited quite often while we were away, but those were more or less like tourist trips. But when you settle down and you are like an indefinite Indian resident, then you got to figure out a lot of things that you don't figure out as a tourist. So what kind of bank accounts would I have? What kind of investments would I make? What who would be my doctor? What kind of insurance policies would I have? How would I deal with taxes? These were some of the things that we had to deal with. So then what we also did was that I ended up doing a few early experiments. One which would help me settle down and then find out how I could achieve my goal of giving back, even on a pro bono basis, because I didn't need to really earn a lot of money to give back. So the first thing that I tried to do once I came back, and because I was from IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Mumbai, and I had kept in touch using connections. It was quite easy for me to meet the Secretary of Finance at that time, and he was a very nice person. And I told him I wanted to help with payments, and I had this kind of expertise, and I had come back to India. So he talked to the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, who asked me to fly down and meet their head of payments. So when I met the head of payments, we had like a 15-20 minute discussion, which was going pretty well, till the person said, it's great that you want to help and you can do this pro bono and all that kind of thing, but there's just one problem. So I said, what is that? He said, India already has the best payment system in the world. So how can you help? So this kind of illustrates a little bit of that when you come back, and especially from, say, somebody like from America, after you haven't spent a lot of time in India and you're not part of the system, and you're not necessarily Caucasian, you look Indian, and things like that. And if you're not necessarily a very renowned person of global repute, even if you can help, even if you want to help, it's very, very difficult in a place like India to help. Uh, so this was very normal for 2004. Maybe things have become a little better, but it is still really hard uh, for uh, people who are quote unquote outsiders to help. Because one, I think the people feel threatened that if they get help, then it will mean that they weren't doing a great job. Or I don't know what exactly the reasons are. But clearly, the gentleman at RBI who headed payments was kind of delusional because India was nowhere near having the best payment systems in the world in 2004. Now with NPCI, it has some pretty good systems, but still, given the rates of adoption and things, the systems in China, in terms of moving to a cashless economy, or Japan or the Nordic countries, they are way ahead. So in quite a few things, this is a trend in India that there is delusional thinking. But without dwelling on this too much, the next thing that I tried to do was to set up a band of angels, which would do early stage investing in India. And I actually made a couple of investments. And then I realized that the ecosystem for that was not very well developed. Uh, Both the quality of the entrepreneurs, the people who wanted to be angels, was not something which I felt very comfortable with. So I didn't, after a few early investments and working very closely with entrepreneurs, I decided to not spend too much time on that aspect of being an early stage investor through a band of angels. Then I joined a company from the Hero Group, which was trying to do bill payments. It was called Easy Bill, and it was headed by one of the younger generations of the Munjals. And it was a good experience. But again, I kind of realized that they weren't looking and they didn't have the expertise, they didn't have the DNA, they didn't have the risk appetite to do something really big in payments. So that really was not something that was very exciting. Now, the other thing that we ended up doing over the course of these 15 years was that we had a lot of fun because we liked adventure. So we did a lot of trekking in the Himalayas. We did whitewater rafting in the Colorado River at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And we did cycling trips in southern France. And we also ended up getting to know some of the guides quite well. So when the Adventure Travel and Tourism Association had its keynote, has it had a event in Bhopal in India, we were one of the keynote speakers. So we, sometimes people feel that, if you retire early, what are you going to do? And why is it good to retire early? Why not just keep working, especially if you love what you're doing? So I think for us, because we had a lot of interests and we could do a variety of things without having to worry about finances, we at least found that experience very rewarding, and we would not change it for anything. But it depends on your mental makeup. Just like not everybody can be a disruptive innovator, not everybody can retire early and be very happy. But with that, I will end this session and continue the story in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.